The autumn wind howled through the crumbling walls of St. Margaret's Abbey as 17-year-old Eleanor swept the cold stone floors with practiced efficiency. Her calloused hands gripped the worn broom handle, each stroke a reminder of the 7 years she had spent within these walls since fever claimed her, parents, and left her with nothing but the rough woolen dress on her. "Back! Eleanor!" called Sister Agatha from the doorway, her voice carrying an unusual urgency. "Mother Superior wishes to see you in the scriptorium immediately." Eleanor's heart quickened as she set aside her broom and smoothed her simple brown kirtle. Summons to see Mother Superior were rare and often brought unwelcome news. She hurried through the narrow corridors, her soft leather shoes making barely a whisper against the stone. The scriptorium smelled of parchment and ink, where the sisters spent their days copying religious texts by candlelight. Mother Superior, Catherine stood beside a tall, imposing man dressed in rich burgundy wool trimmed with fur. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, and a sword hung at his side, marking him clearly as nobility. "Ah, Eleanor," Mother Superior said, her weathered face grave. "This is Sir Roderick de Montford. He has come with a proposition that may interest you." Sir Roderick studied Eleanor with sharp grey eyes, taking in her auburn hair that escaped her simple white veil and her clear green eyes that held intelligence despite her humble station. Though her clothes were plain and patched, she carried herself with dignity that spoke of better beginnings. "The Abbey faces difficult times," Mother Superior continued, her hands clasped tightly. "The harvest was poor, and winter approaches. We can no longer provide for all our charges." Her voice softened with genuine regret. "Sir Roderick seeks a bride, and he is willing to offer generous compensation to the Abbey for your hand." Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. Marriage to a stranger was not uncommon for women of her station, but she had hoped her life within the Abbey walls would continue indefinitely. "Mother Superior, I had planned to take vows and serve God here." "Child," the older woman said gently, "God works in mysterious ways. Perhaps this is his plan for you." Sir Roderick stepped forward, his voice deep and measured. "I will not deceive you, mistress. This arrangement serves my needs as much as yours. My lands require management, and I need heirs to secure my holdings. In return, you will have protection, comfort, and position as Lady of Montford Castle." Eleanor studied his face, searching for cruelty or deception, but finding only honest pragmatism. His proposal, while sudden, offered escape from uncertainty and poverty. "What manner of man are you, Sir Roderick? Do you treat your people fairly?" A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Ask any of my retainers. I am just in my dealings, though I expect loyalty and diligence in return. You would want for nothing material, and I would not force unwelcome attentions upon you." The weight of decision pressed upon Eleanor's shoulders like a heavy cloak. Around her, the familiar walls of the Abbey seemed to close in, reminding her of limitations and dependence. Outside, autumn rain began pattering against the narrow windows, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the sisters chanting evening prayers. Mother Superior placed a gentle hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "The choice is yours, child, but winter comes quickly and our stores grow thin." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, offering a silent prayer for guidance. When she opened them again, her voice was steady despite the trembling in her chest. "I accept your proposal, Sir Roderick." The knight nodded solemnly. "We shall wed within the week before the worst of winter sets in. I will send appropriate garments and provisions for the ceremony." He turned to Mother Superior. "The gold promised for the Abbey's coffers will arrive tomorrow." As arrangements were discussed around her, Eleanor felt as though she watched the scene from outside her own body. In 7 days, she would leave the only home she had known since childhood, to become wife to a man whose past remained completely unknown to her. That night, as she knelt in prayer beside her narrow cot, Eleanor wondered what secrets lay hidden behind Sir Roderick's careful words and measured demeanour. Something in his eyes suggested depths unexplored, and she could only hope that her desperate gamble for survival would not lead to greater perils than the ones she sought to escape. The morning of Eleanor's wedding dawned grey and cold, with frost covering the Abbey's herb garden like delicate lace. She stood before a polished bronze mirror in the guest chamber, hardly recognising herself in the fine garments Sir Roderick had provided. The deep blue wool gown, embroidered with silver thread at the sleeves and neckline, transformed her from Abbey servant to noble lady in appearance, if not in birth. Sister Margaret carefully arranged Eleanor's auburn hair beneath a silk veil, securing it with a circlet of hammered silver. You look beautiful, child, she whispered, though her eyes held sadness at the parting. I feel like I'm wearing someone else's life, Eleanor replied, touching the soft fabric with wonder. Never had she owned anything so fine, and the weight of the silver ornaments felt foreign against her skin. The chapel bells began their solemn toll, calling the small gathering to witness the ceremony. Eleanor's hands trembled as she made her way to the Abbey's main chapel, where Sir Roderick waited beside Father Benedict. The knight wore a rich green tunic over fine linen, his sword replaced by a jeweled dagger befitting the sacred occasion. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of Latin prayers and exchanged vows. Eleanor's voice barely rose above a whisper as she promised to honour and obey her new husband, while Sir Roderick's responses rang clear and confident through the stone chamber. When he placed a gold ring upon her finger, she noticed his hands were calloused from sword work, despite his noble bearing. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder, Father Benedict pronounced, and Eleanor found herself bound to a stranger whose very surname she had learned only days before. The wedding feast, though modest by noble standards, exceeded anything Eleanor had experienced. Sir Roderick had brought provisions from his lands: roasted fowl, fresh bread, honey cakes, and wine that warmed her throat and eased her nervousness. The Abbey's main hall had been decorated with late autumn flowers and evergreen boughs, creating an atmosphere of celebration despite the circumstances. As the evening progressed, Eleanor observed her new husband carefully. He spoke courteously with Mother Superior about Abbey needs and discussed harvest yields with Father Benedict as though genuinely interested in their concerns. With Eleanor, he was unfailingly polite but distant, treating her more like a valuable acquisition than a bride. "You seem thoughtful, my lady," Sir Roderick said during a quiet moment between conversations. "Are you regretting your decision?" Eleanor considered her words carefully. "I am grateful for this opportunity, Sir Roderick, but I confess I know little about the life that awaits me at Montford Castle." His expression grew serious. "It is a good place, Eleanor. The castle sits upon a hill overlooking fertile valleys, and the people are hard-working and loyal. My steward, Thomas, has managed affairs well in my absence, and the household staff will help you learn your duties as lady of the manor. And what of your family? Do you have kin at Montford?" A shadow crossed his features so briefly that Eleanor almost missed it. "My parents are deceased, and I have no brothers or sisters. You will find the castle peaceful, but perhaps lonely at first." Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but Eleanor sensed this was not the time to press for details. Instead, she nodded gracefully and turned her attention to the honey cake before her. As the feast wound down, Sir Roderick rose and addressed the small gathering. "We must depart at dawn for Montford. The roads grow treacherous with winter approaching, and I would have my bride safely home before the worst weather arrives." Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. Tomorrow, she would leave behind everything familiar and venture into a world completely unknown. She glanced around the Abbey's hall, memorizing the faces of the sisters who had been her family for 7 years. That night, in her final hours at St. Margaret's, Eleanor knelt in the chapel where she had spent countless hours in prayer and contemplation. The flickering candles cast dancing shadows on the stone walls as she sought guidance for the journey ahead. "Grant me wisdom to be a good wife," she whispered, "and strength to face whatever trials await." As if in response to her prayer, she heard footsteps behind her. Sir Roderick approached the altar, his face solemn in the candlelight. "I want you to know," he said quietly, "that I will do my best to be a good husband to you, Eleanor. Our marriage may have begun as necessity, but I hope it will grow into something more worthy." Eleanor met his eyes and saw sincerity there, along with something else she couldn't quite identify. "I hope so as well, Sir Roderick." As they knelt together in prayer, Eleanor felt the first stirring of something that might, in time, become affection. Perhaps this desperate bargain would prove to be a blessing after all. Dawn would bring new challenges, but for now, she chose to hope. The journey to Montford Castle stretched across 3 days of rough travel through countryside painted in autumn's dying colours. Eleanor rode beside Sir Roderick on a gentle mare he had provided, her new travelling cloak wrapped tightly against the October chill. Behind them rode 6 men-at-arms in leather and mail, their presence a reminder of the dangerous times that made such escorts necessary. "Tell me about your lands," Eleanor said, as their horses picked their way along a muddy track between harvested fields. She was eager to learn about her new home and break the polite silence that had settled between them since leaving the Abbey. Sir Roderick's expression warmed slightly at her interest. Montford has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather received the grant from King Henry for service in the Welsh campaigns. The castle commands a strategic position overlooking the Wye Valley, controlling trade routes and river crossings. As they crested a hill, he pointed toward distant smoke rising from cooking fires. That village is Little Montford. The people there have served my family faithfully, and I protect them in return. Their children learn trades in my castle workshops, and their grain feeds my household through winter. Eleanor observed the neat fields and well-maintained cottages with approval. A lord's character could often be judged by the condition of his peasants, and these people appeared healthy and prosperous despite the recent harvest challenges that plagued much of England. What of the castle staff? Are they long in your service? Most have served since my father's time. Thomas the steward practically raised me after my parents died. Margaret the cook rules the kitchens with iron will but feeds everyone well. You'll find them loyal, but set in their ways. Eleanor nodded, already planning how she might ease into her role without disrupting established routines. Leadership required patience and wisdom, lessons she had learned watching Mother Superior manage the Abbey's complex relationships. On the second day, they encountered a group of pilgrims returning from Canterbury, their clothes dusty and their faces gaunt from long travel. Sir Roderick immediately ordered his men to share provisions and offered the pilgrims escort to the next town. The roads grow more dangerous each year, he explained. To Eleanor as they watched the grateful travellers depart, brigands prey on merchants and pilgrims alike. King Stephen's wars have left too many masterless men roaming the countryside. Eleanor was impressed by her husband's generosity towards strangers. Many nobles would have passed by without offering aid, but Sir Roderick seemed genuinely concerned for the pilgrims' welfare. That evening, as they camped in a sheltered grove, Eleanor helped prepare the evening meal alongside the men-at-arms. Her years at the Abbey had taught her practical skills that served her well on the journey. She noticed how Sir Roderick's men respected rather than feared him, speaking freely but maintaining proper deference. Sir Roderick treats his people well, observed Walter, the captain of guards, as Eleanor stirred a pot of porridge over the fire. Not like some lords who think peasants and soldiers are less than human. He seems a fair man, Eleanor agreed, glancing toward where her husband discussed tomorrow's route with his scouts. Walter lowered his voice conspiratorially. He's had his share of troubles, our lord has. But he's never let hardship make him cruel. That's the mark of true nobility, in my thinking. Before Eleanor could ask what troubles Walter meant, Sir Roderick approached the fire. The weather looks fair for tomorrow. We should reach Montford by afternoon if we make good time. The third day dawned clear and cold, with frost glittering on fallen leaves. As they travelled deeper into Sir Roderick's lands, Eleanor noticed increased activity. Farmers driving cattle to winter pastures, woodsmen cutting timber for fuel, and merchants hurrying to complete business before harsh weather arrived. Late in the afternoon, they rounded a bend in the river valley, and Eleanor saw Montford Castle for the first time. The massive stone keep rose from a rocky outcrop, its walls and towers commanding the surrounding countryside like a watchful guardian. Banners bearing Sir Roderick's arms snapped proudly in the wind, and smoke rose from numerous chimneys within the walls. It's magnificent, Eleanor breathed, awed by the sight of her new home. And well defended, Sir Roderick added with evident pride. The walls have never been breached, and the position is nearly impregnable. From the highest tower, one can see for leagues in all directions. As they approached the castle gates, horns sounded to announce their arrival. Eleanor straightened in her saddle, knowing that dozens of eyes would be watching their new lady's first appearance. The massive oak gates swung open, revealing a bustling courtyard filled with servants, soldiers, and craftsmen going about their daily tasks. Thomas the steward, a distinguished man with greying hair and kind eyes, stepped forward to greet them. "Welcome home, my lord, and welcome to Montford, my lady." Eleanor accepted his bow gracefully, aware that this first meeting would set the tone for all future relationships within the castle. "Thank you, Thomas. I look forward to learning from your wisdom in managing the household." As Sir Roderick helped her dismount, Eleanor felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Montford Castle would be her home, these people her responsibility. She only hoped she would prove worthy of their trust and her husband's confidence. The next phase of her new life was about to Eleanor's first weeks at Montford Castle passed in a whirlwind of learning and adjustment. Each morning brought new responsibilities and faces to memorize as she gradually assumed her role as Lady of the Manor. The castle proved even larger than it had appeared from the valley, with 3 courtyards, numerous outbuildings, and chambers enough to house a small army. Thomas the steward proved invaluable in guiding her through the complex web of household management. Together, they reviewed the castle's stores in preparation for winter, checking supplies of grain, salt, preserved meat, and ale that would sustain the household through the lean months ahead. The harvest was adequate, but not generous, Thomas explained as they walked through the storage chambers beneath the keep. We must be careful with portions, especially if we host guests during the winter season. Eleanor nodded, making mental notes about rationing and preservation techniques. Her years managing the Abbey's modest resources had prepared her well for such challenges. What about the village families? Do they have sufficient stores? Most are well prepared, though a few of the widows might struggle. Sir Roderick traditionally provides support to those most in need. Then we shall continue that tradition, Eleanor said firmly. Prepare a list of families requiring assistance. I'll review it with my husband. Margaret the cook initially viewed Eleanor's interest in kitchen affairs with suspicion, but gradually warmed to her new mistress when she realized Eleanor sought to learn rather than interfere. The robust woman taught Eleanor to identify the best cuts of meat, judge the freshness of fish brought from the river, and calculate quantities needed for feast preparations. Your husband entertains often during winter months, Margaret explained, while kneading bread dough with practiced efficiency. Neighbouring lords visit when travel becomes easier after the worst storms pass, and there's always the Christmas feast to prepare for. Eleanor found herself looking forward to these social obligations. The isolation she had feared at Montford seemed less daunting when she realised the castle served as a gathering place for the local nobility. Her relationship with Sir Roderick developed slowly but steadily. He treated her with unfailing courtesy and increasingly sought her counsel on household matters. In the evenings, they often sat together in the great hall while he attended to correspondence and she worked on embroidery that would adorn the castle's chambers. You've adapted well to life. Here, he observed one evening as Eleanor carefully stitched silver thread onto an altar cloth for the castle's chapel. The servants speak highly of your fairness and wisdom. Eleanor looked up from her work, pleased by his approval. Everyone has been patient with my questions and helpful in teaching me the ways of Montford. I hope to prove worthy of their trust. Sir Roderick set aside the letter he was reading and studied her face in the firelight. You undervalue yourself, Eleanor. You bring fresh perspective to old problems and genuine care for the people under our protection. Something in his tone made Eleanor's pulse quicken. Over the weeks, she had begun to notice the strength in his hands as he helped her from her horse, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at her small accomplishments, and the protective way he positioned himself between her and any perceived threat. I confess I had concerns about our marriage, she said carefully, but I find myself content here. More than content, Sir Roderick moved closer to her chair. As do I, Eleanor, more than I had dared hope when I first approached the Abbey. Before either could say more, Thomas appeared in the doorway with urgent news. My lord, riders approach under torchlight. They bear the colours of Sir Geoffrey de Clare. Sir Roderick's expression immediately grew serious. Geoffrey travels at night only when pressed by urgent business. Have the gates opened and prepare chambers for his party. Eleanor noticed the tension in her husband's shoulders as he rose to greet their unexpected guest. Sir Geoffrey was apparently someone of importance, though she couldn't understand why a friendly visit would cause such concern. Within the hour, Sir Geoffrey and his small retinue clattered into the courtyard. Eleanor watched from the solar window as torchlight illuminated the arrival of a man perhaps 10 years older than her husband, richly dressed and bearing himself with the confidence of high nobility. Sir Roderick greeted his guest courteously but formally. Eleanor could not hear their words from her position, but body language suggested careful diplomacy rather than warm friendship. Thomas, Eleanor called to the steward as he hurried past her doorway. Who is Sir Geoffrey de Clare? My husband seems cautious about his arrival. Thomas paused, choosing his words carefully. Sir Geoffrey is a powerful lord with lands bordering ours to the east. He and Sir Roderick have complicated history. Nothing dangerous, my lady, but they move in different circles at court. Eleanor sensed there was more to the story, but Thomas had already bowed and continued about his duties. She returned to the window, watching as servants attended to the horses and luggage of their guests. Something about this unexpected visit unsettled her, though she could not identify the source of her unease. Sir Geoffrey's arrival had transformed her husband from relaxed companion to wary host in mere moments. As she prepared for bed that night, Eleanor wondered what news or business had brought Sir Geoffrey to Montford on such a cold October night. Whatever it was, she suspected it would prove significant for her new life at the castle. 3 days after Sir Geoffrey's arrival, Sir Roderick announced that a feast would be held in honour of their guest and to formally introduce Eleanor to the neighbouring nobility. Word spread quickly through the countryside, and by evening, Montford's great hall filled with lords and ladies from surrounding manors, creating the grandest gathering Eleanor had witnessed since arriving at the castle. Eleanor wore her finest gown, a deep emerald silk that Sir Roderick had commissioned from travelling merchants. The seamstresses had worked tirelessly to ensure it fit perfectly, and Margaret had loaned her a necklace of pearls that had belonged to Sir Roderick's mother. As she entered the great hall on her husband's arm, Eleanor felt every eye upon her. "You look radiant," Sir Roderick murmured as they took their places at the high table. "The lords will be envious of my good fortune." The feast began with great ceremony. Servants bearing torches lined the walls, while musicians played lively melodies from the gallery above. The aroma of roasted meats, spiced wines, and honeyed pastries filled the air. Eleanor observed the elaborate ritual of medieval hospitality, the careful seating arrangements that reflected each guest's status, the formal presentation of dishes, and the intricate dance of conversation that revealed alliances and rivalries. Sir Geoffrey sat to Eleanor's left, proving himself a charming dinner companion. He regaled her with tales of court life in London and praised her management of Montford's household. "Your husband chose well," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Beauty, wisdom, and noble bearing are rare combinations indeed." "You flatter me, Sir Geoffrey," Eleanor replied gracefully. "I am still learning the ways of noble society." "Ah, but you were not always of humble station, were you?" Sir Geoffrey's question carried an undertone that made Eleanor's pulse quicken. "Your bearing suggests gentle birth despite your years at the Abbey." Eleanor chose her words carefully. "My parents died when I was young. I remember little of my earliest years." Sir Geoffrey nodded thoughtfully and turned his attention to other guests, leaving Eleanor puzzled by his interest in her background. As the evening progressed, wine flowed freely and conversations grew more animated. Eleanor noticed that Sir Roderick remained unusually quiet, responding politely to questions, but initiating few discussions. When Sir Geoffrey rose to offer a toast, tension seemed to ripple through the high table. "To our gracious host, Sir Roderick de Montford," Sir Geoffrey announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "A man who has overcome great adversity to build a prosperous domain." The gathering raised their cups, but Eleanor caught the sharp look that passed between her husband and their guest. Something in Sir Geoffrey's tone suggested deeper meaning behind his seemingly innocent words. "And to his lovely bride," Sir Geoffrey continued, "whose noble grace honours this house." He paused, his eyes meeting Eleanor's directly. "May she find happiness despite the shadows of the past." Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. What shadows could he possibly mean? She glanced at Sir Roderick and saw his jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. As the feast continued, Eleanor found herself drawn into conversations with other ladies, learning about their families, their lands, and the complex web of relationships that bound the local nobility together. Lady Catherine de Ashford, a widow perhaps 15 years Eleanor's senior, proved particularly informative. "You've done well for yourself." "My dear," Lady Catherine said quietly as they watched the men discuss politics and hunting. "Montford is a fine estate, though it carries certain complications." "What manner of complications?" Eleanor asked, her curiosity overcoming discretion. Lady Catherine glanced around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "Your husband has worked hard to rebuild his family's reputation. His father, well, there were difficulties before Sir Roderick inherited. Nothing that reflects poorly on your husband himself, you understand." Before Eleanor could press for details, the conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the hall's entrance. A late arrival had appeared, an elderly man in rich but travel-stained clothing, supported by 2 younger companions. Eleanor watched as Sir Roderick's face went pale, The hall gradually fell silent as guests noticed the newcomer. Sir Geoffrey's expression shifted from surprise to something approaching satisfaction, as though events were unfolding exactly as he had anticipated. The elderly man's voice, though weak with age, carried clearly through the silent hall. "I seek Sir Roderick de Montford. I bring news that cannot wait for morning." Sir Roderick rose slowly from his chair, his composure carefully maintained despite obvious distress. "I am Sir Roderick. What news do you bring, good sir?" The old man's eyes searched the high table until they fixed on Sir Roderick's face. When he spoke again, his words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock throughout the assembly. "I am Brother Marcus of Whitmore Abbey. I come to inform you that Lady Isabel de Whitmore died 3 days past. On her deathbed, she confessed to all assembled that you are her son, born before her marriage to Lord de Whitmore. She named you heir to her substantial dowry lands." The silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor felt the world tilt around her as the implications struck home. Her husband was not the legitimate heir to Montford as she had believed, but the illegitimate son of a noblewoman who had concealed his existence for decades. Sir Geoffrey's satisfied smile confirmed Eleanor's growing suspicion that this revelation was not entirely unexpected by their guest. The feast had become a stage for the exposure of secrets that would change everything about their lives at Montford Castle. The great hall remained frozen in stunned silence for what felt like an eternity. Eleanor watched her husband's face as he processed the monk's revelation, seeing years of carefully constructed identity crumble in mere moments. The assembled nobles whispered among themselves, their voices creating a low buzz of speculation and gossip that would spread throughout the region by morning. Sir Roderick finally found his voice, though it carried a tremor Eleanor had never heard before. "Brother Marcus, are you certain of these claims? Lady Isabel was known for her volatile nature in her final years." The elderly monk reached into his worn leather satchel and withdrew a sealed parchment. She provided written testament, witnessed by 3 brothers of our order and sealed with her ring. The document names you as her natural son, born in the year of our Lord, 1123, at Whitmore Abbey, where she sought sanctuary during her confinement. Eleanor's mind raced as she calculated the implications. If Sir Roderick was illegitimate, his claim to Montford Castle could be challenged by distant relatives with legitimate bloodlines. Everything she had come to love about her new life suddenly seemed precarious. Sir Geoffrey rose from his seat, his expression one of false sympathy. "This is indeed shocking news, Roderick. Though I confess certain inconsistencies in your family's records had raised questions among those of us familiar with genealogical matters." Inconsistencies. Sir Roderick's voice carried a dangerous edge that made several guests shift uncomfortably. "Your remarkable resemblance to Lady Isabel, for one," Sir Geoffrey continued smoothly, "and the curious gap in documentation regarding your mother's identity. But come, this need not be cause for distress. Illegitimate birth carries no shame when acknowledged properly." Eleanor saw through Sir Geoffrey's false concern immediately. This revelation served his purposes somehow, though she couldn't yet understand how. She made a decision that surprised even herself, rising gracefully from her chair to stand beside her husband. "My lords and ladies," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall, "whatever the circumstances of my husband's birth, they do not diminish his worth as a man or his accomplishments as lord of this domain." Murmurs of approval arose from some quarters, while others remained skeptically silent. Eleanor continued, drawing strength from her years observing Mother Superior navigate difficult situations with dignity. "Sir Roderick has proven himself through deed and character. He protects his people, manages his lands wisely, and serves his king faithfully. These qualities matter far more than the circumstances of his conception." Thomas the steward stepped forward from his position near the servants' area, his weathered face resolute. "My lady speaks truly. I served Sir Roderick's father and watched our current lord grow from boy to man. His bloodline matters less than his honour." One by one, other voices joined in support. Walter, the captain of guards, Margaret the cook, and several village representatives who had been invited to the feast, all spoke in defence of Sir Roderick's character and leadership. Eleanor felt a surge of pride in the loyalty her husband had earned through fair treatment and just governance. "Sir," Geoffrey's smile faltered as he realised his expected triumph was transforming into something quite different. "Of course, Roderick's personal qualities are admirable, but legal matters remain complex. The inheritance laws regarding illegitimate claims to feudal holdings are quite specific. Brother Marcus cleared his throat respectfully. If I may, Sir Geoffrey, Lady Isabel's testament addresses those concerns. She bequeathed her substantial dowry lands directly to Sir Roderick, with proper documentation of his parentage. These holdings include 3 manors and considerable wealth accumulated during her marriage to Lord de Whitmore. Eleanor saw her husband's expression shift from distress to amazement. Rather than losing status through this revelation, he was potentially gaining significant wealth and property. The irony was not lost on her that Sir Geoffrey's attempt to embarrass Sir Roderick had backfired spectacularly. Furthermore, the monk continued, Lady Isabel specifically requested that I convey her regret for years of silence. She feared Lord de Whitmore's reaction during their marriage. But on her deathbed, she wished to acknowledge her firstborn son and provide for his future. Sir Roderick accepted the sealed document with hands that trembled slightly. When he broke the wax seal and unfolded the parchment, Eleanor could see tears gathering in his eyes as he read his mother's final words. My friends, Sir Roderick addressed the assembled guests, his voice stronger now. I thank you for your patience during this unexpected revelation. Yes, I am illegitimate by birth, but I am also the acknowledged son of Lady Isabel de Whitmore and heir to her considerable estates. He turned to Eleanor, taking her hand in his. And I am blessed with a wife whose wisdom and loyalty have been demonstrated before us all this evening. The applause that followed was genuine and warm, transforming what Sir Geoffrey had intended as humiliation into a celebration of truth, acknowledged and honour affirmed. As the evening wound down and guests prepared to depart, Eleanor and Sir Roderick found themselves alone in their private chambers. The weight of the evening's revelations hung between them like a heavy curtain. I should have told you, Sir Roderick said quietly, staring into the dying embers of their fire. I suspected the truth but could never prove it. My father raised me as his legitimate heir, but there were always whispers, always questions. Eleanor moved to sit beside him, taking his hands in hers. You are exactly the man I married, Roderick. Nothing revealed tonight changes that. If anything, your mother's acknowledgement has strengthened our position rather than weakened it. And you truly don't mind being married to a bastard? The pain in his voice broke Eleanor's heart. I mind being married to a man who thinks his worth depends on the circumstances of his birth rather than the content of his character, she replied firmly. You have shown yourself to be honourable, kind and just. Those qualities make you more noble than many men born in wedlock. Sir Roderick pulled her close, and Eleanor felt the last barriers between them dissolve. Their marriage, which had begun as desperate necessity, had transformed into something deeper and more meaningful through shared trials and mutual respect. Outside their window, snow began to fall, blanketing Montford Castle in pristine white. The revelation of Sir Roderick's illegitimate birth, rather than destroying their happiness, had ultimately freed them both from the shadows of uncertainty that had haunted their early months together. As they prepared for sleep, Eleanor reflected on the strange path that had brought an orphaned Abbey servant and an illegitimate knight together. Perhaps God truly did work in mysterious ways, weaving their separate desperations into a love story that would endure whatever challenges lay ahead. The feast had ended, but their real life together was just beginning.